We have a sphere that can copy everything and turn into what it has copied. Its creator released it into this land and observed it. Initially, the ball copied a stone and remained still there. Slowly, the moss grows on the rock, so the ball copies the moss. Then the snow started to fall. A wounded wolf fell right next to the rock, and the ball copied the wolf, then gained its first consciousness. The ball began to stagger and also copied the wolf's wounds, thus feeling for the first time the discomfort of the pain. However, the ball quickly recovered and continued to run. The ball went aimlessly. After some time, the ball returned to the wolf's old owner. The owner was very happy to see the wolf return. When he walked into the house, he saw a lot of new things, and that warm feeling made him want to stay there forever. The owner feeds it, then the ball sleeps. The food in the place was so limited that they couldn't choose a good meal. After eating, the owner goes to bed. The next morning, he went to cut wood from the surrounding houses to warm himself. The people who had lived with him had left 5 years ago in search of a better place. He was the only one who lived there, alone with his dog. He actually wanted to leave, but his dog always bit his legs to hold him back, so he had to stay. The adults asked him to stay and take care of the elderly, but they had all left. The wind chimes in front of the house rang, making the boy think everyone had returned. However, when he came home, the desolate scene remained unchanged. The wind chimes rang because a large fish had eaten the bait. That night, the child slaughtered the fish. Because he wanted to save firewood, he chose to eat it raw instead of cooking it. He still remembered the faces of everyone who had ever lived there and was eager to leave the place. The next day, he decided to pack his things and go look for a better place. After walking quite a distance, he found a stone with an arrow pointing forward. It must be a message left by the people. He continued his journey and camped at night to rest. The next morning, he continued his journey and found another pointing stone. The days passed by with the same routine. Nothing changed until one day, he found a tree on the road. He used it for firewood and returned to the main road. When he saw the rock again, he suddenly fell into the cold lake. His leg was injured, so he had to camp again to bandage his wounds and warm his body. The child decided not to return because the food had not run out. He continued his journey as long as he still had strength. After walking nonstop for 2 days, his injuries were getting worse, but he didn't give up. He thought if the people hadn't returned, they would have reached a very good place. He didn't want to go back only to rot to death in that house. However, he found the next stone with an X mark on his arrow. Nearby are the wreckage of vehicles and a cemetery, similar to the one he made for his grandparents. The boy knew what had happened, but he still tried to think positively even though his tears kept flowing. He wondered if he could reach a better place. The boy gave up and decided to return home. He and his wolf walked for a few days to return to the old house. The child was depressed for several days, not lighting a fire or looking for food. The wounds on his legs were barely treated, so his condition worsened. Finally, the child sat on a chair and died. The wolf approached him, then copied his form into a human. The child had reached a better place in heaven, while the wolf gained human form and began his journey to the place he had always dreamed of. From then on, he would definitely meet a lot of people and experience a lot of new things. The wolf then went south to seek information for its own evolution. However, due to the lack of human characteristics, wounds on his legs, and almost no nutritional intake, he quickly died. But every time he died, he could be reborn. With this being, every death is a transformation. To date, he has died 6 times. The first death takes 5 days to be reborn, but the 6th death takes only half a day. Finally, he managed to reach the mountain that the previous owner wanted to achieve. However, he was immediately attacked by a giant bear and died again. In a village, there was a little girl named March. He usually only plays with Perona, an older girl who lives nearby. In the middle of the game, March is called home by her parents. Little March desperately wanted to grow up because now there were only 3 children left in the village, and 2 of them were in this house. His mother believed that he would only be considered an adult when he could sleep without bedwetting. The next morning, Perona was still practicing archery as usual, although her skills were not good. Meanwhile, March is still playing with her dolls. When Perona came to play, suddenly the bell rang. Perona knew what it meant, so she immediately took March down the mountain. However, halfway they are stopped by Hayes, the head of the village guard council. It turned out that the bell was a call to gather. March is brought back to the village, and the village elder along with Hayes gathers everyone to announce that they have been chosen by the god who brings prosperity and peace. They had to choose a holy girl to offer to the gods. The village elder inspected the 3 children in the village and chose the little March. Everyone congratulated him on being chosen. Her parents were smiling in front of others, but when they got home, they could only cry and apologize to her. Hayes later reveals that the girl has been chosen as a sacrifice to the gods. On the day of the ceremony, March would attend a farewell party with his family, then be taken to the mountain to be sacrificed and eaten by the gods. A year later, they would return there to retrieve his remains so that his family could bury him. March stubbornly refused because he didn't want to die. He wants to be an adult. March doesn't accept that she's the only one who has to die, but she has no choice. In the next few days, March was constantly watched by Hayes. If he tried to escape, his younger brother would be chosen instead. On the day she was about to be taken away, March had to say goodbye to her parents. On the way to the mountain, Hayes says that when March moves to another world, she will be free to be an adult as she wishes. Suddenly, an arrow flew towards Hayes, and March took advantage of the opportunity to escape. Someone appears and bumps into Hayes before fleeing. While running, March stumbles and falls into a small pond nearby. There, March accidentally meets the immortal. When the 2 warriors came and watched the creature rise again, they ran away in fear, thinking it was a monster. Little March tried to ask but didn't get an answer, so she decided to follow him. The person who attacked Hayes was actually Perona. He plans to use a fake skeleton to fake March's death. However, Hayes decided to leave Perona there because she would definitely be punished. The 2 soldiers return and tell Hayes that they have to find another child because March is with the monster. Little March realizes that the creature can't speak. The 2 were hungry, and when they saw the tree full of fruit, March climbed up to pick it. When he gave the fruit to the creature instead threw the fruit on the ground and ate it like a wolf. March tries to teach her to say thank you, but her efforts are unsuccessful. March picks the fruit again, and the creature eats it all without leaving anything for him, making him cry. He climbed trees to pick and eat fruit for himself. However, when he saw the creature standing below while staring at him, he threw some fruits down for the creature to eat. The feeling of caring for the creature, like a child, made March feel very interested. When the creature was full, it went behind a fallen tree to sleep. That night, March dreams of returning to the village after fleeing, only to see the 2 remaining children sacrificed, then Perona, and the villagers who turned away from her. March wakes up feeling worried about what happened in her dream. He decided to return to the village. When the creature woke up and didn't see March, it followed him. March throws the fruit to direct it in the other direction, but the creature continues to follow it. As time went on, March felt more and more like a mother to the creature. He then decides to give him the name Fusher, which means immortal. Meanwhile, 2 soldiers are guarding Perona while waiting for Hayes to return. However, Perona takes advantage of their carelessness to take the knife hidden in her shoes and cut the laces. Nearby, the giant bear that had previously killed Fusher approached. When Perona manages to cut the rope, the bear appears with its huge body. The arrow did not hit him, and the bear easily killed one of the soldiers with a single bite. The other soldiers fled, and the bear then chased Perona. Perona manages to cut the rope in time and escape, but the bear chases her all the way to the edge of the cliff, causing her to fall. Meanwhile, Hayes finds March walking with Fusher. Luckily, Perona gets caught in a tree branch and falls into the pond where March previously found Fusher. March now says goodbye to Fusher to go with Hayes. However, witnessing March's departure, Fusher seems to be starting to evolve. He gradually learned the most important aspect of being human: emotions. On the road, Perona saw the bitten fruit scattered and followed it. He accidentally meets Fusher and asks about March, but since Fusher hasn't learned the language yet, He can't answer. Perona realized that the direction Fuchsia was heading was towards the sacrificial altar. Meanwhile, March is forced to eat something that appears to be medicine by Hayes. When Hayes asks about Fuchsia, the soldiers refer to him as the monster they saw before. Suddenly, another soldier came and told them that they were in danger because of the bear. According to them, the bear is a god they want to sacrifice at the expense of March. The frightened warriors wanted to go back, but Hayes insisted on continuing and took a detour to reach the altar. After taking the medicine, March fell asleep. He was then taken to the altar by Hayes. Together with the soldiers, Hayes cleans the bones of the previous victim, places March there, and ties him tightly. Suddenly, a loud voice was heard approaching. It was a giant bear that attacked. At that moment, Perona also ran in. Hayes ignores him, thinking that Perona will just be another prey for the bear. Perona tried to cut the rope with her knife, but the knife was not sharp enough. Then, the bear approached and hit Perona with its claws. At this moment, Fuchsia walked in. Hayes ignored him and closed the gate. However, when he recognized Fuchsia, he and the soldiers climbed the wall to watch. They see Fuchsia being bitten on his head by a bear, but Fuchsia uses his paws to open the bear's jaws and escapes. Fuchsia then transforms back into a wolf and begins to attack the bear, biting it. No matter how severely Fuchsia was attacked, he could always regenerate. Fuchsia bit the bear's neck, causing pain, making the bear throw Fuchsia away. However, Fuchsia keeps coming back, dodging the bear attack and climbing up to bite his nose. Fuchsia bit hard, causing the bear to be in even more pain. Although the bear tore the Fuchsia apart, the immortal was unharmed and eventually managed to bite the bear's nose to pieces. The bear fought in vain and eventually died. That night, March wakes up unaware of what has happened. Hayes approaches suddenly and uses his spear to cut March's rope, giving him and Perona a choice: die there or follow Hayes back to his country, leaving their village. Perona chooses to follow Hayes, so the people bring the bear and Fuchsia with them. Fuchsia then approached March. Although Perona was still afraid of Fuchsia due to his dangerous nature, Fuchsia simply bent down to eat the fruit that March dropped and said, "Thank you," just as March had taught him earlier. Years ago, Perona was actually chosen as a victim, but her older sister tricked her into hiding in a tree and eating the food her brother had prepared for her to survive. After a week, Perona returns to the village and is hated by the villagers because she escaped the sacrifice, causing her brother to be sacrificed instead. He was shunned and expelled from the village. In her desperation, she ran away and saw what looked like her brother's severed leg, which frightened her. Back in the present, Perona doesn't know what kind of expression her brother has when facing death. On the way to Hayes country, March is still busy feeding Fuchsia and teaching him to speak. Perona recognizes the old woman who had chosen March before, but the woman points out that she is actually a criminal. There are two tribes in this land: the Ninen tribe, where the village of March is located, and the Janum tribe, where Hayes is from. The Janum people had always planned to take over the land of Ninen, but outwardly they pretended to want to help the Ninen tribe in performing their rituals. They used a criminal like the old woman to deceive the Ninen tribe and disrupt their sacrificial ceremony. Gradually, the Ninen tribe will be spiritually ruled by the Janum tribe without realizing it. Perona hates the Ninen tribe because they are willing to sacrifice their own flesh and blood just to follow their beliefs that she considers ridiculous. Perona was determined to put an end to this barbaric tradition, but the old woman believed it was impossible because the Ninen tribe was very blind to their beliefs. Later, Fuchsia urinates in the cart, forcing Hayes to stop so they can clean it up. When March brought Fuchsia down, suddenly Fuchsia remembered his old master's figure and transformed back into human form. That's when March realizes that the dog that has been following them is actually Fuchsia. Perona was also surprised to find out that March already knew this immortal. Perona wonders if Fuchsia can find meaning in his never-ending life. Towards nightfall, Hayes managed to take them to the country of the Janum people, which was much more advanced and modern than the village of March. Hayes let them eat whatever they wanted and said that he would pay. While enjoying the meal, March remembered her parents and felt sad. Suddenly, they saw a post office nearby. March walked in, wanting to send a letter to his parents. However, when the shopkeeper found out that March's parents were from the Nine tribe, he seemed hesitant. Hayes explains that the Nine people are illiterate, so even if March writes something, her parents won't be able to read it. March then made a handprint with ink on the paper, thinking her parents would understand. However, no one knew the exact address of his parents because there were more than 40 villages in Ninen, and they did not know which village the letter should be sent to. Perona decides to keep the letter and will send it once they know the address. Afterwards, they go to dinner, where Hayes has to teach them how to use chopsticks. While Fusher was eating the candy pierced in the stick, his mouth was pierced by the stick, and it bled. However, he soon learned how to eat properly. Suddenly, March and Perona fainted. Obviously, Hayes was planning something. He then brought Fusher before his superiors and reported how he had defeated the bear god. To test Fusher's immortality, they bring a prisoner to stab him. Fusher quickly recovered and created a thorn that pierced the man's shoulder. Fusher now understands the pain and continues to be tortured and attacked. When he tries to escape by turning into a wolf, Hayes shoots him with an arrow, causing him to fall halfway. He then throws Fusher into the cell with March so that the girl can calm him down. March pulled the arrow from Fusher's body and searched for Perona. Perona is upstairs and asks March to tie an arrow to a string and send it up, as well as send some Fusher feathers. Fusher suddenly ran to the corner of the cell and started digging to get out. Outside, they saw a bear that they had previously thought was dead, but was still alive, but very weak from its injuries. March noticed that the bear's back was full of arrows and wanted to take care of it. Suddenly, Hayes returns and says that he can't find anyone willing to take care of the bear. After finding March, he appointed the girl to guard the bear on the grounds that if the bear ate it, it wouldn't be a problem. Over the next few days, March takes care of the bear while guarding Fusher. Meanwhile, Perona upstairs plan their escape. He plans to help the old woman escape, then together defeat the guards to take March out. He wanted to bring the bear's skin and fur back to the village as proof that they no longer needed sacrificial rituals. March manages to pull all the arrows out of the bear's body and befriends him. He believes that the bear will eventually return to its habitat without being attacked by humans again. However, a voice of gratitude was heard, and the bear eventually died. Perona knows this and decides that she must act immediately. That night, he climbed out to retrieve evidence from the bear's body before it was taken away the next day. While climbing, he slipped, but he had already prepared by tying the rope beforehand. However, the rope broke, forcing him to immediately swing to a nearby warehouse. He managed to get into the warehouse, but was caught by a soldier. When the soldier tried to attack him, he immediately fought back and stole his belongings. Perona, now dressed in a soldier's uniform, goes looking for March to help her and Fusher escape. He opened the prison cell for March and did not forget to free the old woman as well. He then led them to an escape route through the sewer and asked the old woman to lead March first. When March sees what Perona is planning, she realizes that Perona is about to hurt the bear. The little girl asked Perona to stop. March couldn't accept Perona's actions even though she believed that the bear was dead. However, Perona felt she needed the bear skin as proof to convince the villagers that they would no longer sacrifice the children. Perona tries to explain to March that what she is doing is actually for good, but March stubbornly refuses. Perona didn't want to waste more time there, so she gave in to March's wish and left with her. He thought that he would have to explain everything to the villagers directly. On a horse-drawn carriage getaway, March shares his plans for the future when he grows up, believing that the villagers will be happy to see him again. The road they traveled was getting bumpy, so the old lady offered to take turns driving. The train suddenly started burning in one of its corners, forcing Perona to extinguish the fire. Suddenly they were attacked, and Perona used the equipment she had prepared to repel the arrows. He retaliated with his bow, but to no avail. Hayes then offers to let them live if they hand over Fusher. Of course March refused, so the soldiers jumped on the carriage. Perona had to fight and managed to kick one of the soldiers from the train. Meanwhile, March, wanting to help, jumped out to block an arrow aimed at Perona. At that moment, Emotions surge within Fuchsia, who then jumps out and turns into a huge bear, attacking Hayes. Fuchsia then went on a rampage in the city, causing chaos. Perona realizes that March is seriously injured and tries to bandage her wound to stop the bleeding, but the injury is too severe for a young child. March whispered her last words before exhaling her last. Perona feels very devastated because since coming to the village, she has always lived alone, and March is the only child and person she interacts with. The little girl had always thought of herself and Perona as parents to the dolls, but now March had to go, leaving Perona to be the mother of the dolls alone. The old woman could only continue to drive the carriage, but Perona hugged March's body and jumped off the carriage. He goes to see Fuchsia, who transforms back into human form to see Perona. Perona approaches Hayes with a weapon, intending to confront him. Meanwhile, March begins to see visions of herself returning home with her parents and growing up, but she doesn't see Fuchsia anywhere. Later, he realizes that he witnessed the destruction of the city caused by Fuchsia. In his vision, Perona pointed the spear at Hayes. March tries to summon Perona, but the barrier between life and death prevents Perona from hearing her voice. Perona feels that she cannot live without March and plans to follow her to the afterlife. March begs Perona to stop and calls Fuchsia to help. Somehow, Fuchsia heard the call and stopped Perona. Fuchsia then transforms into a bear to take Perona away. Perona is finally brought back to the village by Fuchsia. Everyone recognized Fuchsia as the bear god they worshipped and became afraid. Suddenly, Perona appeared, and March's parents wondered where she had been for the past half a year. Perona gives them a letter of March along with the remains of their daughter's body. March's father blames himself for not protecting his daughter. When they hear that Janome's men are approaching, Perona tells Fosse to run away, knowing that they are chasing her. Fosse seems to understand and sadly turns into a wolf before leaving. Perona later discovers Hayes is tracking Fuchsia and shoots him with the same arrow that had killed March. Perona really wanted to kill Hayes, but only managed to injure his arm. After witnessing the second death right before his eyes, Fuchsia underwent a significant change. He continues on his journey in search of new stimuli, spending most of his time in wolf form, determining direction through a sense of smell. Fuchsia didn't like the bear shape because it only brought pain. Sometimes it transforms into a human form, but doesn't do much with that form. When hungry, it transforms into the form of March to climb trees and pick fruit. Fuchsia then smells a familiar scent, namely the scent of an old woman. He approaches her, and the woman thinks they have abandoned him on the way, leaving him lost and having to beg to survive. The woman believed that March was still alive until she saw Fuchsia approaching, staring at March's bloodstain and transforming back into the form of a teenage boy. Just then, he realized that it was Fuchsia. Fuchsia continued to wander aimlessly, and the old lady followed him. After a few days of starvation, he became tired of trying to keep up with Fuchsia. Looking at his thigh, he felt hungry and tried to bite it, but Fuchsia turned into a wolf and growled. Then Fuchsia transforms into March, climbs trees, and eats fruit alone. When the old lady wanted to eat as well, Fuchsia threw some fruits down for her and asked for a thank you. The woman thanked Fuchsia for pleasing him. When the old lady saw a map, she took out a piece of paper to copy it. Fuchsia seems interested in writing, so the woman teaches him how to write and wants Fuchsia to follow him so that he can teach him more about writing and living like a human. The old woman, whose name was Pyorin, taught Fuchsia how to write the names of people he had met. He also taught her how to name the objects around her, drink water like a human, eat politely, and say good after eating, not just thank you. The two of them traveled and studied together until they reached a coastal fishing village. Fuchsia now knows how to ask questions and remember the words he has learned. He spoke more clearly, telling Pyorin about his desire to grow up the way March wanted. Before meeting Pyorin, Fuchsia always traveled alone until someone fed him. Although he didn't know the person's name, he remembered it clearly and now used that person's form to live. That night, Pyorin realizes that they have reached his homeland, a country that has often been at war with Janome. She planned to stay overnight before visiting her acquaintances. While sleeping, Fusher is suddenly attacked by a supernatural creature that pierces through his body. He transforms back into a wolf and sees the creature transform into the form of a teenage boy. Suddenly time stopped, and the spiritual entity told Fusher that the form was his that had been stolen by the creature. In short, this is Fusher's enemy, and he must fight him to reclaim the form. Fusher attacks, and the entity explains that this creature has a core and exists to steal Fusher's transformation form. Fusher's wolf form is then stabbed and stolen, forcing him to switch to his bear form to fight. Although the bear was big, Fusher managed to capture the wolf and try to destroy it. However, the creature pierces Fusher's hand and tries to take the form of a bear as well. Fusher acted as quickly as possible and exposed the creature's core. However, the creature had already taken the form of a bear, forcing Fusher to use March's form to escape. Fusher climbed a tree and jumped to the creature's core location, trying to pull it out. The creature uses tree branches to attract Fusher, but this instead helps pull the creature's core out, causing it to stop functioning and dry out. All the forms that had been stolen were eventually returned to Fusher. When Fusher wonders who the entity is, the creature reveals itself to be the creator of Fusher, who wishes to change the world. However, creatures like the one they had just fought were sent to stop Fusher. The creator said that they would meet again, but for now, it was best for Fusher to enjoy his life. Pyorin didn't know what had just happened, and Fusher didn't tell him. The next morning, Fusher and Pyorin arrive at her lover's house and meet a strange boy, wearing a transparent mask like a lizard. Back in the past, there were two brothers named Shin and Gugu who always dreamed of having a lot of money to live in a mansion. In the morning, Gugu usually goes to the local market to sell vegetables given by his master. There, the boy was always attracted to a young girl his age, even though he didn't know her name. After the market closes, Gugu returns to his shelter and finds Shin talking to three strangers his brother claims to be his friends. The child had no choice but to believe what his brother said. However, when Gugu checks his money box, he finds that the money is missing. He suspected his brother of taking it, but could not suspect his only relative, so he hid the box of money in a nearby tree trunk and went to eat bread alone with a stray dog he found. The next day, Gugu met the same dog he had fed yesterday. At the same time, he heard someone call out to the dog. Following the voice, he met the young girl he secretly liked. The boy returned the dog to its owner and was given a gold ring by the girl. If sold, the money could last a lifetime, although it was a bit excessive. Gugu returns happily carrying the ring in his hand, but then he realizes that his money box is completely empty, leaving only a letter inside, and Shin disappears without a trace. Sadly, Gugu walks up the hill, sees a wooden truck, and thinks about throwing himself under it to end everything. Suddenly, a wooden block fell from the truck and almost hit it, making him cancel the stupid thought. The truck driver got off to apologize and asked the boy to guard the wooden block while he sought help. However, the block began to slide down the hill, and below it was a young girl who was picking flowers. Gugu jumped up to push the girl to safety, while he himself fell with the wooden block. Even more tragic, the huge beam shattered Gugu's face. He later learns that the girl he likes is named Ren, after hearing his father calling for help from the top of the hill. While Gugu was lying under a wooden block with no one paying attention to him, he remained lying there until the night when an old liquor seller found him and took him for treatment. When he came to his senses, Gugu saw that his face had been completely destroyed, so he put on a mask to hide his damaged face. Back in the present, when Fusher and Pyorin enter the house, they meet Gugu. Mrs. Pyorin then took everyone outside to demonstrate Fusher's abilities to the old liquor seller. Gugu is so fascinated by Fusher's abilities that he offers friendship and takes Fusher around. During dinner, Mrs. Pyorin and the old liquor seller discuss how to use Fusher to make money, but Gugu stands up to protect Fusher because he has become close and sees Fusher as a member of his family. The next afternoon, Ren, the girl Gugu had saved, came to the store. He is interested and wants to know Gugu's name, but Gugu thinks Ren is paying attention to him because he likes him. However, in fact, Ren was more interested in Fusher. That night, Gugu cried alone, and in his grief, the old liquor seller appeared and advised him to learn to accept life slowly, saying that in order to succeed, one must accept bitter and sweet experiences. Those words gave Gugu new hope, and he immediately ran out to practice hard. The old couple and Fushir could only smile at Gugu's innocence. The next morning, Rin came to the liquor store to ask the old man if he could work there. Seeing that she was beautiful and willing to work without pay, the old man immediately agreed. Everyone certainly knew that the reason he wanted to work there was because of a handsome, immortal youth. During dinner, the old man warns Fushir not to use his power in front of Rin so that the locals do not become suspicious and attract unwanted attention. While cleaning and washing dishes, Gugu and Fushir discover that if there is an object that hurts Fushir, he can replicate the tools. However, only tangible objects could be imitated, not intangible objects such as fire. One day, Gugu cuts off Fushir's hand, making Fushir cry in pain. Gugu tells Fushir that if something hurts him and he doesn't like it, he should speak up to tell others. The next morning, Rin comes again to the liquor store to look for Fushir and deliberately asks Gugu how to heal the wound on his hand. Gugu ran looking for the old man to ask how to help the girl he liked. The old man took out the medicine from inside Gugu's body, revealing that during the operation to save Gugu's life, he had implanted a medicinal liquid inside his organs. This made Gugu angry and horrified by the old man's strange hobby, so he escaped on all fours like an animal. However, no one in the house cared to look for him. Even Fushir, who was close enough to Gugu, didn't want to look for him, probably still upset that Gugu had hurt him. Without Gugu, no one did the housework, so Fushir decided to take over the household chores. However, Fushir's cooking style that is not suitable for humans makes everyone feel wary. Meanwhile, Gugu diligently searches for a new job, ignoring rumors from locals calling him a monster. He went back to his old employer who agreed to rehire him and even offered him a place to live. However, his employer's son shows hatred for Gugu's deformed face, so Gugu wisely refuses to stay with them. After gaining a reputation as a monster, Gugu takes off his mask to show his deformed face and receives the nickname. Meanwhile, Fushir is having trouble at home. Feeling that being a wolf is not enough, Fushir decides to turn into a bear for fun. As a bear, Fushir accidentally destroyed the old man's potato field while digging. Even in the kitchen, Fushir turns into a bear, making things even more chaotic. Realizing his incompetence, Fushir asks Pyorin for guidance on homework. However, Pyorin tells him to look for Gugu and asks him to teach him. Rin then brings tea and asks why Pyorin didn't help Fushir. Pyorin replied that they shouldn't spoil Fushir too much because this would help him become more human. On the other hand, Gugu's situation was very sad. After taking off his mask, the villagers continued to mock him. Worse, her employer's son came to her hut to insult her and asked her to stay away from her father because it was considered embarrassing. Not wanting to cause trouble for the people who had been kind to him, Gugu left. He tried to find a job, but everyone who saw his face reacted with fear and harsh words. In a very bad financial situation, Gugu remembers the ring Rin gave him and goes to the pawn shop. However, at the last moment, he changed his mind and didn't end up selling it. While walking down the street, Gugu meets his brother, Shin, who has abandoned him in the past. With a kind heart, Gugu gives the ring to Shin and leaves, hoping that his brother can start a new life. While sleeping in a hut to shelter from the rain, Gugu is suddenly arrested by two strangers who think they can sell it. At that time, Fushir appears in the form of a bear to save Gugu, scaring the kidnappers into escaping. After that, Fushir and Gugu reconcile. They then use the form of a Fushir bear to scare the people around the village. When Fushir asks when they will return to the liquor seller's house, Gugu doesn't want to go back, still angry at what the old man did. Because he hadn't eaten for several days, Gugu fainted and was brought back to the hut by Fushir. Fushir managed to create a lot of food for Gugu by stimulating their subconscious. The stronger the stimulus, the deeper the memory, so it is easier to replicate food. Once full, they talked. Gugu shared that he once lived in a mansion full of food with his parents and two younger sisters, living happily with his family. But one day, due to work, the family moves out and leaves Gugu and Shin. It turns out that the people Gugu considers his family are just employers, and only Shin is really there to raise him from birth. But in the end, even Shin abandoned him. However, now Gugu has Fushur, whom he considers more than family. He even hoped that, when he died, Fushur would take the form of himself to always remember him. That night, Ren found them using his little dog. He told them that the old man had been reflecting on his actions and was eager for Gugu to return. However, after losing his mask, Gugu is afraid of being ridiculed by the villagers and refuses to leave. Fushur says it's not a big deal and immediately runs in search of a mask for Gugu, leaving the embarrassed Gugu alone with Ren. Seeing that Gugu was too embarrassed to say anything, Ren started talking about himself. She actually disliked her family because she was always under the strict supervision of her parents without freedom, which is why she often ran away from home. Afterwards, Ren gives him the mask he often uses when sneaking out of the house and says that no matter what happens to Gugu, he will always be willing to open his heart to understand Gugu. Hearing this, Gugu couldn't continue hiding inside the tent. Fushur, after searching for quite a while, finally found Gugu's mask inside the pool. At the same time, he met his creator. Its creator warns Fushur not to think that peace will last forever because the enemy is always waiting to attack. On the other hand, after Gugu frees Ren from his family's henchmen who want to bring him back, they reunite with Fushur. Gugu puts his old mask back on and gives the other mask to Ren because he doesn't want others to recognize him. After walking for a while, the group was found by Ren's nearby maid who had been taking care of her since childhood. How could the maid not recognize Ren even though she was wearing a mask? Gugu didn't want to let the maid bring Ren back, so she grabbed her hand and ran into the forest. Fushur transforms into March to distract the maid so that the two of them can escape. As the creator had warned before, a mysterious enemy reappeared and captured Fushur. Hearing Ren's maid's cries for help, the two boys return to check and see that the enemy has stolen March's form from Fushur. When facing an enemy, Gugu is attacked, but Fushur jumps to withstand the attack. The monster used a rope to tie the two of them together, forcing Fushur to turn into a bear to break free. However, the monster then throws Gugu and stabs Fushur, continuing his attempt to steal Fushur's transformation ability. Gugu managed to get up, despite dizziness and vomiting alcohol liquid in his body. A nearby torch ignited alcohol on the ground. Gugu got the idea of spitting fire to burn the enemy, but unfortunately, he had already vomited all the alcohol in his body. The boy tells Fushur to hold on while he rushes back to the old man's house to get some more alcohol and go back to help Fushur. When Gugu arrives, he sees Ren's family forcing Ren to leave the old man's house. Gugu, who is under the influence of alcohol, staggered, not caring about what is happening around him. He approached the old man and asked that his body be filled with alcohol so that he could save Fushur. Furthermore, a drunken Gugu defends Ren in front of his parents and boldly declares that he is the man who loves Ren the most, then goes back to fight. The enemy creature had turned into a bear at that moment, but with his body full of alcohol, Gugu quickly spat out a huge flame that burned the enemy to charring. After seeing the light emanating from the defeated enemy, Gugu witnessed Fushur's true form. Fushur has returned to his stone form after losing all of his transformations, but thanks to Gugu's help, he managed to recover all of his lost forms. They return at dawn, and since the Rin family is still there, Gugu shows off his cooking skills by preparing a big party for everyone. Outside, the creator talks to Fushur, revealing that the creatures that attacked him are knockers, whose existence is meant to destroy this world. The creator asks Fushur to go and strengthen himself, because when knockers lose, they always learn from their defeat, and when they return, Fushur can lose all his forms and memories, returning to being stone as before. However, Fushur stubbornly refuses the creator's orders because he still has Gugu, believing that Gugu will fight with him. It seems that the creator already knows Fushur's fate, so he doesn't say much before leaving. Years passed, and Gugu grew into a strong young man thanks to diligent training. Thanks to learning from Gugu, Fushur can now cook very well. He grew taller and spoke more fluently than before. Ren's birthday is coming soon, and he invites Fushur and Gugu to attend. Fushi has never changed shape once in the past 4 years. He grew naturally, and the reason he didn't change shape was because, firstly, fortunately the knockers didn't attack, and second, Fushi wanted to try to live without changing shape like Gugu. During this time, Fushi gained less stimulation and experience. Most of the experience he gained was just about normal life. While learning to sew, Rin asks about Gugu's favorite food, and Fushi reveals that it is crayfish. Rin plans to prepare it for the party, though he doesn't know what else Gugu likes. Fushi thinks that Gugu will like anything if it comes from Rin. Rin later revealed that his parents immediately forced him to marry someone he had never met. He explains to Fushi what marriage means and believes that one should only marry the person they like. Fushi realizes that the person Rin seems to like is Gugu, and he also likes Rin. Fushi then handed the towel he sewn to the old man. Meanwhile, outside, Gugu accidentally meets his brother, Shin, who doesn't understand why Gugu is wearing a mask, but mentions that he has been looking for him all this time and is happy to see his brother is fine. Gugu angrily asked why Shin was there. Pyorin, who heard about Shin's arrival, came out to see him. Shin wants to apologize to Gugu for being affected by bad things in the past, but Gugu believes that is Shin's true nature, which has left him. Shin can't deny it but still wants to return the ring to Gugu, who refuses by dropping it. Shin had been looking for Gugu for 4 years. He has been working and earning a steady income, owning a farm equipment store, although his dream of building a mansion is still far away. He wants to achieve it with Gugu, but Gugu refuses, complaining that since being abandoned, he has suffered but managed to overcome it. Gugu mentions that the people around him are now the most precious treasures, the eccentric but genius old man who has become his savior, the wise and attractive Pyorin, the gentle Rin, and Fushi, whom he considers like a brother. He told Shin not to try to take it from this family again. Shin must accept his brother's wishes and let Gugu continue with his life. He tells Gugu to ask for his help whenever needed because that's the only thing he can do for his brother. Shin then meets everyone and tries to return the ring, but the old man takes it. When Rin saw the ring, he remembered that it was a gift from his father that he had given to the person who helped find his lost dog. That person turned out to be Gugu, whom he secretly liked. Later, Rin brought the ring to search for Gugu and found him sleeping. He tried to attach the ring to his finger, but his hand was too big, making Gugu wake up. Rin wants Gugu to confess his feelings to her, just like he did before in front of Ren's parents. However, Gugu doesn't remember it because he was drunk at the time, upsetting Rin and leaving while demanding that Gugu come to his birthday party. The old man explained that it was the effect of alcohol that revealed true feelings, and he thought Gugu was in trouble, but was also happy for him. The old man then gave Gugu a new mask specially made to help him fight monsters. This mask is equipped with an ignition system, allowing Gugu to spit fire without the need for a torch. Gugu then prepares to attend Ren's birthday party. The moment the old man saw Gugu and Fushi leave, he became emotional. Although Gugu was only going to leave for a day, he was touched to see how Gugu had grown up. He regretted that he would not be able to witness Gugu's entire growth before he died. Gugu wanted to buy a gift for Ren and remember the kind of flowers he had once admired. So he bought the flowers. When they arrive at Ren's house, they walk in, and Gugu casually picks up the food, making people gossip, even though he doesn't really care. Ren comes out to greet them, and Gugu shows off his new mask. When Gugu tried to discuss the previous incident, Ren timidly avoided the topic. He receives the vegetables from Fushi, and Gugu gives him the flowers, but the flowers accidentally remind Ren of his past accidents. Gugu felt awkward because he didn't know it, but Ren accepted it anyway and went inside. His mother wanted to throw away the flower, but Ren wanted to keep it because the flower came from Gugu. Meanwhile, outside, a young man criticizes Gugu for wearing a mask at the event, but Gugu refuses to take it off, leading to a minor fight that Ren has to stop. Afterwards, Ren's father introduced him to the fiancé who had arranged for him, and they were allowed to talk outside. Gugu saw Ren laughing and having fun with that person. He felt heartbroken and almost left. Fushi wants Gugu not to give up so quickly, but Gugu has long accepted that he is in a difficult position and chooses to leave. Ren then runs to Gugu and apologizes for what happened before. He then asks why Gugu is wearing a mask, and Gugu tells the truth. His face was shattered by a falling wooden block when he tried to save someone who was in the path of the block. However, he still felt guilty for leaving a scar on that person's arm, but Ren thought Gugu's injuries were much worse. Ren confesses that he knew Gugu was the one who saved him before, and now he is sure of it. Suddenly, the ground where Gugu was standing collapsed, causing him to fall. The creator of Fushur appears to tell him that the knockers have returned and have spread throughout the mansion. Fushur prepares to look for Gugu when he sees the house almost collapse. He turns into a bear to prop up the house so that everyone can escape. Gugu held something like a tongue growing out of a rock and was pulled by someone from above. He went inside and found Fushur still supporting the ceiling because Ren's parents hadn't come out yet. He takes them out and back to help Fushur. Ren doesn't want Gugu to return to danger, but he considers brotherhood more important than women. When Gugu entered, he saw that Fushur had returned to his form from 4 years ago. A huge stone monster appeared to attack. Gugu spewed fire, but the monster was unaffected because it was made of stone. The monster hit the ground, causing the ground to split in half, and the two of them falling into a pile of piles beneath it. Fushur turns his limbs into arrows to stick to the stone wall and climb, but the stone tentacles pull the ground back. Fushur then transforms into March to climb and pull Gugu. Gugu knew the layer of stone covered the flesh inside like the tentacles, so they looked for a weak spot together. Gugu finds a hole and asks for an arrow from Fushur to enlarge the hole. When the inside is exposed, Gugu immediately spews fire into it, shattering it into pieces. However, the monster's core was not destroyed. The core stuck to the wall and moved itself to the wall. Fushur took his knife to attack, but not fast enough. Fushur and Gugu still had hope of winning when suddenly Fushur was strangled to death and his March form was stolen. When Gugu is about to be attacked, Ren runs to save him. When the two of them tried to escape, a bear monster attacked, causing the entire mansion to collapse. Fushur managed to get up, but suddenly felt a pain that didn't come from him. Fushur knew something bad was going on. Gugu and Ren are now trapped under the rubble. Gugu knew he couldn't last any longer. They promised each other that they would pick flowers together. When they managed to escape, Ren took off Gugu's mask and saw blood flowing from his face. Suddenly, Ren kisses Gugu, and at that moment Fushur realizes that he has acquired a new form of transformation, namely Gugu. Fushur couldn't accept the fact that someone close to him had left. He denies that Gugu is dead, but still uses Gugu's form to fight. Fushur continued to spit out flames until the monster dropped him into the sea. The monster chased after him, but the sudden change in temperature caused the monster to be destroyed, and the core escaped. The creator told him that the core had gone west, and he could still chase it if he left right away, but Fushur chose to stay and finish everything in that place before catching up with the core. Afterwards, Fushur saw that they managed to save Ren, but Gugu had actually died. Shin came to bring his brother's body home. Gugu now sees the image he wants most. Everyone is important to him, but when he realizes the fact that he has died, Gugu can only hug everyone for the last time. A few days later, Fushur decided to leave, so as not to attract more enemies. Shin takes over Gugu's duties at the spot, while Ren, who has just come to his senses, runs in search of Gugu. Not knowing what had happened, he went to the liquor seller's house. At that moment, Gugu had already delivered his last words to Fushur. When Ren arrives looking for Gugu, Fushur is forced to transform into Gugu to deceive him. Fushur tells Ren that Fushur is the dead one and takes him to see the grave. The old couple understood and pretended to deceive Ren. Ren wants to go pick flowers with Gugu, but Fushur, in Gugu's form, says that he is busy and will see him later, while telling him to take care of the ring. In the next few days, Ren continued to wait for Fushur in the flower field. He tells his father that he won't remarry because he already has someone he loves, and he believes that person is now traveling with Fushur. He knows everything but chooses to deceive himself in order to avoid suffering. Fushur had traveled for 4 days and then called the creator. He asks what to do now, but the creator only asks him to become stronger to reclaim what has been stolen. Fushur had lost all image of March, and he was necessary because he was a very special existence in this world. The knockers also needed him, But Fusher thought that if he became something lifeless, the knockers wouldn't need him anymore. When Fusher tries to transform into fruit, the creator turns him back into a human, saying that even in the form of fruit, knockers will still come to attack him. If Fusher continued like that, he would be transformed back into a ball and would never be able to return to human form again. The creator says that he doesn't care, but he is sure Fusher will care. Fusher is asked to fight if he wants to, but the creator says that one day he will disappear and the mission to protect the world will fall into the hands of Fusher. Therefore, he had to train Fusher in any way. When Fusher tries to fight back, the creator turns him back into a wolf and says that if he doesn't want to suffer anymore, he has to become stronger. Then, Fusher smells a familiar scent and runs to find Pyorin. Pyorin has decided to follow him because Shin and Run are now helping the liquor seller. Run had realized what had happened to Fusher, which was why he let Pyorin just leave. Pyorin knew that he wouldn't live much longer and wanted to support Fusher with the rest of his strength. When Fusher refuses, Pyorin refuses to accept his rejection. Fusher doesn't want to see anyone else die and begs for Pyorin to come home, but Pyorin hits him with a stick, saying that this is his life and Fusher has no right to control what he wants to do. Eventually, they traveled together, although they had not reconciled and did not speak to each other. Pyorin continued to offer food to Fusher, but Fusher refused. They then arrive at a village, and Pyorin enters to eat. Fusher was worried that the knockers would find them, so he didn't want to stay long. He then asks the creator about the location of the knockers and learns that they are still underground and have not yet appeared in their core form. The creator couldn't feel them, but as they grew up, he could feel them clearly. When Pyorin asks who he is talking to, Fusher tells him about the creator. Fusher knows that only he can protect Pyorin now, and it seems that the creator deliberately let Pyorin follow him to give him a reason to become stronger. The next morning, Pyorin wants the fruit and tells Fusher to climb a tree to pick it. When Fusher is unable to climb a tree, Pyorin tells him to transform into March. However, Fusher had lost March's form and only had a vague image, so he could no longer transform into March. The creator explains that once the shape is gone, Fusher can only transform back if he manages to reclaim it. Hearing his condition, Pyorin was worried that Fusher would lose Gugu's form and with it, also lose his memory of him. It would be like dying again, and everyone's memories of Fusher would be gone, as if they had also died. Determined not to let that happen, the next day Fusher began to study his abilities more thoroughly. He can transform into anything he touches, but the conscious being is different. He could only turn into them after they died. When Pyorin cooks the crab, Fusher feels the crab-like pain, but even though he can turn into a crab, the form has no life. Pyorin asked how he had won before, and after Fusher explained, he said it was due to the sudden change in temperature. Pyorin then shows a forest full of animals that humans usually avoid due to their danger, where Fusher can gain new, more useful powers. The next day, they boarded a boat to reach the forest. However, once they boarded, a girl asked them to separate themselves according to gender, male and female. No one suspected anything, and they followed the instructions. Fusher is then taken and locked in a cage with people who appear to be slaves, with stamps on their hands. After Fusher was stamped, it felt very painful, but he soon recovered. He was worried that Pyorin would also be caught. Fusher and the others are then taken to an island. When an inspector sees he has no stamp mark, they think he was taken there by mistake. The girl who had previously taken Pyorin went back to take out Fusher. When Fusher asks about Pyorin's whereabouts, the girl doesn't know. Fusher then decides to leave and try to track down Pyorin by following his body scent. Fusher smelled the scent of Pyorin on the other side of the large wall, but digging into the ground was unsuccessful, and climbing required effort to plant the arrows one by one. While climbing, he was blown by the wind and hit his head, causing a small crack. The same girl and her group found her and found out about her regenerative abilities. They promised to keep it a secret. Fusher later learns that the place is a prison island used to hold dangerous inmates. When Fusher wants to borrow a bow to shoot an owl and use it to fly across the wall, the girl stops him because the owl is his faithful friend. Fusher asked if there was another way to get through the wall, but unfortunately there wasn't. However, the girl said that she could gain strength in that place by winning a tournament. The winner of the tournament will get all the privileges on the island. Fusher didn't know what to do in the tournament until the announcement of the rules was announced. Whoever stayed on the field was the winner. Fusher thought it was easy because he couldn't die. However, the massacre begins immediately, and Fusher sees the reality of the fight as a meaningless murder, where everyone frantically slaughters each other to be the last one standing. Fusher felt nauseous to see it. Finally, a red-haired man became the last one standing. However, since Fusher was still standing on the field, the man threw an axe at his head. Fusher saw a lot of people watching and didn't know what to do, remembering that the liquor seller had once warned him not to reveal his abilities to others. But he needs to win to achieve his goal. He stood frozen, and the man approached him, using all the weapons he could find to stab him. When he saw that Fusher didn't fall, the man realized that Fusher wasn't easy to beat, so he pretended to fall and let Fusher win. Afterwards, Fusher meets the girl again, who introduces himself as Tanari. He takes Fusher to meet everyone and announces that the first 100 people who want to talk to Fusher will have to pay. When a young man tried to oppose this abuse of power, he was instantly shot with a tranquilizer arrow. Tanari helps build Fusher's reputation for being the leader of the island, as the previous leaders always die within 2 weeks, causing chaos on the island. But since Fusher was immortal, they could use it to rule and change the place. However, Fusher didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to save Pyorin and leave. After he left, Tanari and the children who knew about him continued to follow him. The big man was named Yoi, the red-haired girl was Mia, the curly-haired boy was Sandals, and the girl who shot the dart arrow was Opa. They take him around the island and explain that there are 3 churches built there to deceive outsiders, as if the place still has blessings from the gods. The island also has fields, and anyone who steals the crop will be killed and hanged as a warning. Murder is allowed on the island as long as the person is presumed guilty and will be executed without mercy. The resources on the island were extremely scarce, so the inhabitants had to survive at all costs, even though they were desperate to leave the place. Initially, the island was administered by a state, but due to the uncontrolled number of inmates, the island became self-governing. Fusher then looked at the mark on their hand and learned that the triangle symbolized the family members of the criminals, while the mark with a circle in the middle indicated the prisoner, who was considered more dangerous. He doesn't understand why some prisoners can live freely outside, while Tanari has previously said that Pyorin is imprisoned. When Fusher asks why Pyorin is imprisoned while the other prisoners are not, Tanari explains that Pyorin was actually arrested in Janome for poisoning 10 people, and he is classified as a dangerous criminal. However, Fusher felt he couldn't cooperate with them because they were too sick to be able to laugh and play in a place like this. That night, Fusher tries to shoot birds to fly and look for Pyorin, but the creator asks why he doesn't continue the tournament. Fusher replied that he didn't want to kill people. The creator said that death is a part of human life, but humans have the right to choose when they die. He gives Gugu an example, who decides to save Fusher and cut his life short. The creator says that the criminals on the island have traded their lifetime for a chance to change their lives, so Fusher doesn't have to feel guilty. However, Fusher ignored the creator's words and continued his search. When a girl comes over and licks her cheek, Fusher feels annoyed but stays focused on her goal. The next morning, Fusher continued his attempt to climb the wall, despite continuing to fall. Tanari wanted Fusher to prepare for the next match, but Fusher refused to participate because the match was a one-on-one duel, where he had to kill his opponent to advance. He still refused and continued his search for Pyorin. Later, Tanari hears that an important guest from Janome has disappeared, and he goes to the arena to fight many opponents alone. Surprisingly, he was Hayes, the one who had killed March. Fusher later discovered that a ground rat had dug a path under the bricks. He picked up the ground rat and killed it, but soon regretted his actions. Fusher then transforms into a ground rat to dig into the ground. However, a bird catches him and knocks him down near Tanari's group, forcing him into the match. His opponent was an old man who was crazy about fighting. Fusher used his immortal body to intimidate his opponent, but the man wasn't afraid to even bite Fusher's body. Fusher turns into a wolf to attack and scare away, but when that doesn't work, he transforms into Gugu to spit fire around him. When the man saw Fusher continue to refuse to fight seriously, Fusher suddenly remembered Perona. Somehow, Fusher transformed into Perona, and his nimble body allowed him to move quickly. He managed to knock the man down with a kick and win the match. However, Perona's form caught Hayes' attention. Although Fusher no longer has any memories of March, he still remembers Perona and realizes that using this form means that Perona has died. The creator is happy that Perona died early, so Fusher can use his agile body. However, Fusher found the creator's words extremely disgusting. The creator wants Fusher to let go of his emotions about human death, but Fusher feels pain is what drives his development. After that, Fusher was followed again by Tanari. Tanari continues to harass Fusher. Everyone had slaughtered a cow to give food to Fusher, but he refused and left. Tanari knows he doesn't like to kill, but he explains that some people do deserve to die, including the opponent Fusher faced that day, who had killed more than 50 people. Tanari doesn't know how to support Fusher and gain his trust. Fusher refuses his help because, according to him, Tanari is the reason he and Pyorin are involved in this cursed place. Even though Pyorin had killed people before, Fusher still felt Tanari was responsible for this situation. Tanari later recounts that his father also killed people and showed him an EMP, a device to stop electrical impulses, but Fusher still didn't care. As a last resort, Tanari offers to help him find out who has deceived him so that he and Pyorin board this ship. Although Fusher outwardly agreed, he still didn't trust Tanari. That night, Fusher transformed back into a ground rat to dig into the wall. He manages to enter and follow the scent to find Pyorin. While trying to climb, he falls, but Pyorin hears his voice and answers. Pyorin knows that since Fusher uses Perona's form, it means that Perona has sacrificed herself to protect someone. Fusher wants to help him escape from the place, but Pyorin refuses, saying that he is a criminal and that this place is a worthy place for him. Fusher still insists on saving him, but Pyorin asks how he plans to do it. The cell door was locked from the outside, and even if Fusher managed to get through that hole, how would he get it out? Realizing he couldn't save her back then, Fusher left. When Fusher heard Tanari say that he had useful information, he went back outside to ask. However, Tanari said that he would tell after Fusher won the match tomorrow. Fusher has to comply with his wishes. Before entering the arena, Tanari gives him advice to target the opponent's head and make them unconscious, instead of killing them. Fusher then enters the arena and transforms into Perona to fight. His opponent was a martial artist who always protected his head. When his opponent grabbed him by the neck, Fusher turned into a ground rat to dig underground and attack from behind, knocking him down. However, the opponent rose again. When the spectators saw that Fusher was going to save the opponent again, they shot an arrow to finish off the opponent. Fusher protected the man, but he was still hit by an arrow and taken away. Despite being very dissatisfied with the people in the place, Fusher had to accept reality. Outside the arena, he met his opponent's younger brother, who is still alive. The man explained that his sister was the reason he fought because their mother had been taken to that place and died. Now his sister is his only motivation for life. Fusher decided that after winning the tournament, he would help the two brothers leave the place. Fusher then recalls his agreement with Tanari and demands that he reveal the promised information. However, Tanari dodges the question again, making Fusher hate him even more. Fusher's younger brother asks Fusher to make a fire, so Fusher transforms into Gugu to help. Suddenly, another person comes and complains about Fusher, saying that the fighters are risking their lives, while Fusher continues to save people who are considered disrespectful to them. They claim that immortals like Fusher will never understand the value of human life. When Tanari tries to intervene, he is beaten, so his friends have to come to stop the chaos. Suddenly, Fusher is attacked by a knocker and loses Gugu's form. Fusher had everyone flee while he fought the monster. Fusher recalls how he used water and fire, but due to losing his memory of Gugu, he also lost the ability to use fire. He had to flee to an empty place and noticed there was a small hole in the monster's body. Fushar turned into an earthen rat to enter and bite his veins, but the monster threw him out, and Fushar lost that shape as well. Fushar meets Tanari's group again, who want to help him fight the monster. However, Fushar refuses their help because he doesn't want anyone to die. Everyone brought a carriage to try to tie the monster's hands, but the monster shook the ground, forcing everyone to flee. Tanari's group carries explosive bows and arrows to shoot the monster, but the monster's body is too hard. Fushar had them target the gaps in the monster's body. Fushar transforms into Perona and copies the bow to shoot, but Perona's archery skills are still poor, so he has to practice repeatedly until he finally manages to shoot an arrow into the gap. When the arrows start running out, Fushar has to copy more for everyone, and they manage to destroy the knocker. Fushar regains all its forms, from March, Bear, to Gugu. Tanari taught him that sometimes he still needs help from others, and for big tasks, working with a lot of people is the best option. The creator predicted that this island would be a good place for Fushar to thrive. That night, Tanari and Fushar's group held a celebration party. Everyone shares their dreams. Tanari brought food, but only nuts and the like. Fushar then created a lot of food. However, all the food he created was food that Hayes had been given before, which turned out to contain sleeping pills. After eating it, everyone fell asleep. Fushar looked at Tanari's diary and read a single line, but then put it back and left. Tanari suddenly woke up, saw Fushar, and apologized for bringing him to that place. He then took his diary to write his own story. Tanari recalled the past, when his family was the owner of a house selling liquor. Their family lived happily until one day, when she was 7 years old, Tanari found her mother's body at home. Church people accused his father of being the perpetrator and exiled him from the island. Faced with the choice of living as an orphan or following his father to Prison Island, Tanari chooses to follow his father, as he believes his father is innocent. After living on the lawless island, his father decides to participate in the arena in order to get the right to go and promises to meet Tanari in the harbor. In the stands, Tanari prayed for his father's victory. However, after seeing her father turn into a smiling, bloodthirsty killer while killing people, Tanari is so shocked that she deceives herself, thinking that her father is dead and that person is not her father. Eventually, Tanari goes to the meeting place with her father and finds a diary and birthday wishes from him. He kept the gift as one of the few good memories left of his father. Behind him, his father, who had become a murderer, apologized before being poisoned and thrown into the sea. Luckily, Tanari meets friends who are going through a similar situation and lives with them. At the age of 12, he began working importing goods in order to go outside the island, but he remained under close surveillance, so that escape was impossible. At the age of 13, Tanari realized that people outside the island did not accept or sympathize with them. At the age of 14, when he meets Fushar, a mysterious person who comes to the island as a visitor convinces Tanari that Fushar can change the fate of the island. Because of this, he tricked Fushar into bringing him to the island. That person turned out to be right, because with Fushar's immortal ability, he slowly realized Tanari's wishes. The next morning, Fushar transforms back into March to climb and manages to meet Pyoran in prison. He tells Pyoran that tomorrow will be the last match, and if he wins, he will take him out of there. In the last match, Fushar was surprised that his opponent was Hayes, who turned out to be also a mysterious person who had manipulated Tanari. During the fight, Hayes reveals that Perona's form is a gift from him. He had personally killed the entire village of March, including Perona. Hearing those terrible things, Fushar for the first time in his life declares that he will kill Hayes. However, Fushar has not been able to defeat Hayes. He fought without technique and was finally injected with sedatives until he fainted. After winning, Hayes faked the story for the arena's audience. He claims that he had discovered Fushar 5 years ago, guided him, and taught him to become human. However, because Fushar doesn't understand the human soul, he escapes. The audience begins to be psychologically manipulated, and Hayes ends a stunt by saying that he will hand over the leadership to Tanari. The people, who intend to resist, want to kill Tanari and his friends, forcing them to flee together. Meanwhile, Fushur is taken by Hayes to his residence. In bed, Hayes has ill will towards the unconscious Fushur, but Tanari's group arrives and disrupts his plans, forcing him to leave the place. When Tanari's group entered the room, they didn't find Fushur. Hayes tells them that Fushur has been taken to a room deep underground, where no one can contact him. The captain appeared and asked what they were planning for the day. Tanari, using his position as leader, demands that Fushur be returned and says that Fushur will copy the captain's ship so they can leave. However, it is clear that Hayes and the captain do not agree to let that happen. The captain then arrests Oppa and demands that the Tanari group apologize to their guests and leave. The situation became tense when none of the Tanari group members surrendered. However, suddenly Fushur appeared behind Hayes with a sword on his neck. It turns out that Fushur wasn't completely unconscious before. The person taken away by the army was just a corpse that had been separated from his body. Meanwhile, Fushur had turned into a rat and escaped, then appeared as it is now. He demanded that Hayes release the entire Tanari group and promised to fulfill whatever conditions he wanted. The next day, the captain, representing Tanari and now the island's leader, announced that they would move a maximum of 700 prisoners from the island, as the ship could not accommodate more. Tanari chooses the children under the age of 7, his friends, as well as Pyoran, and he doesn't forget to help the 2 martial arts brothers on behalf of Fushur. Then Fushur came to the port to escort Tanari and Pyoran's group. Pyoran said that he would wait for Fushur at the port. However, Hayes comes to interrupt their conversation by drugging everyone to make sure no one is causing trouble. He then took Fushur and dropped him into a very deep well. Tanari wakes up and finds himself imprisoned on the captain's ship. He then met the chief elder and asked him to let him go. Tanari asks them to prepare a boat so that he can return and rescue Fushur. Tanari's owl also follows him, and although Hayes' soldiers find them halfway, the captain does not hesitate to help Tanari face them. Tanari then continues his mission and wants Fushur to be a part of his story in the future. He goes to the place where Fushur is imprisoned and lowers the rope so that Fushur can turn into a ground rat and climb. However, surprisingly, Fushur was already standing behind him, as the well was not a challenge for him. That night, a storm came, preventing them from leaving, so they had to spend the night in a nearby cave. The next morning, when Hayes comes to check on Fushur, he discovers that Fushur has escaped. Suddenly, a soldier reports that the city is in danger. While Fushur and Tanari prepare to leave, the creator appears and tells Fushur that the knockers are attacking the city. Fushur decides to help the residents, but Tanari opposes it, saying that everyone who deserves to be rescued has already been evacuated. However, Fushur left anyway because the creator said that if they left the city, the knockers would become stronger and the problems in the future would be even greater. On the other hand, the knockers had taken over the corpses and risen from the pit. The inhabitants tried to fight back in vain. Fushur jumps up to fight, although he is hesitant since they are human bodies. However, the residents say that they are all dead, so Fushur begins to fight back. In battle, Tanari shows up to support him, and when he is in danger, his friends return to help him. The group teamed up to fight the knockers, hoping to defeat them before nightfall. Suddenly, Oppa slipped and was possessed by a knocker. Mia, who didn't know this, approached her to help and was stabbed. Fushur quickly took Mia away and asked the creator which way was safe. The creator showed a place that was only safe for a few minutes. Fushur takes his group to a temporarily safe place to try to save Mia. Yoi asks Fushur if he has any healing abilities, but Fushur explains that it's beyond his abilities. If he could heal, he wouldn't lose many people who were important to him. The possessed Oppa returns, and Tanari begs Fushur not to hurt her. However, Fushur knew that he couldn't be saved anymore and almost finished him off with a sword. However, Fushur hesitates at the last moment and is caught by the knocker, who steals Perona's form from him. Yoi discovered that the knocker had stuck to his leg. He orders Tanari to continue while he guards Mia. Sandals had to pull Tanari to escape. When the knocker began to spread to Yoi's arm, he did not hesitate to draw his sword and cut off his own arm. Yoi yells at Fushur to turn into a ground rat, then throws it at Tanari's owl so that he can fly away from the area. Yoi is eventually possessed by the knocker and then reunites with his two friends in another world. Meanwhile, Hayes, who was observing the situation from above, was suddenly attacked by a knocker that entered his arm. He quickly pulled the creature out of his arms, then turned his target to Tanari and Sandals, who were fleeing below. However, Fushur, in the form of a bear, attacks Hayes before the madwoman can perform a stupid act. Fushur ignores him and focuses on his mission. When Fushur sees Tanari and Sandals in danger, he transforms into Gugu and spews fire, sweeping away all the remaining knockers. The creator appears and reveals that there are only 3 knockers left on the island. Tragically, the 3 knockers are Tanari's friends. Too emotional to witness the incident, Fushur didn't know what to do. Before he could get an answer, Hayes suddenly appeared, dropped Sandals, and led Tanari to the edge of the huge fire pit. Hayes states that he will do the dirty work by killing Tanari's friends who are possessed by knockers to replace Tanari. However, if Tanari didn't agree, he would kill Tanari. Hearing those terrible things, Tanari decides to drag Hayes into the fire, but Fushur reacts in time to save Tanari and calm and restrain Hayes. When confronted by his close friends controlled by the knocker, Tanari takes up a sword, intending to free them despite having to fight against his own emotions. However, Fushur didn't let him do such a painful deed. Fushur took the sword from him and slowly walked closer to the 3 people. After dealing with knockers and cremating the dead with the locals, Tanari and Sandal decided to stay on the island to rehabilitate the land and take care of the residents, who are now more united and humane than ever. Fushur continues his adventure, taking the unconscious Hayes with him to prevent the madwoman from injuring her friend again. He said goodbye to Tanari and Sandal, then sailed away. After some time, Hayes wakes up on the ship and sees Fushur waiting for him. Fushur asks what Hayes' ultimate goal is to pursue him. Hayes reveals that her only wish is to be by her side. He explains that he killed March and Perona because they were trying to take Fushur from him. Hayes also confesses that he has been in love with Fushur since seeing him fight a bear. He knew Fushur had never felt love before, so he asked her to spend one night with him to understand him. If Fushur didn't like it, he could kill it and use his form to fight. However, Fushur stood up and created another ship to sail on its own. He directly stated that he hated him, and even if Hayes died, he wouldn't care. He asked her to never approach him again. Fushur then leaves, while Hayes continues to scream until the knocker climbs his ship and attacks him. On the way to meet Pyoran, Fushur asks the creator the right direction. The creator told him that the Tanari owl had shown him the way. Fushur remembered that in his early days on the island, he just wanted to leave as quickly as possible. But now, he misses the island and everyone there because without those experiences, he wouldn't be who he is today. When he arrives on the mainland, Fushur finds Pyoran still waiting for him at a restaurant near the port. Remembering the past where his loved ones died due to knockers, Fushur was afraid of involving Pyoran and turned to leave. However, worried that Pyoran didn't have the money to pay, he returned and found that the restaurateur didn't charge him and even gave him a place to stay. The next morning, Fushur suddenly remembers that he left without saying anything and is worried that Pyoran might continue to wait for him forever. He came back with plans to write a letter to him. However, despite trying many times, he could not write anything satisfying. He chose to observe Pyoran for a few days. After a few days of observation, Fushur realized that Pyoran could live well without him. The creator appears and tells Fushur that Pyoran doesn't have much time left to live, so he asks Fushur to stay and take care of him. After consideration, Fushur decides to transform into Mia and gives a blanket as a farewell gift. However, Pyoran recognizes him and detains him there. Pyoran was very happy to see Fushur again. Fushur tries to stay away, but in the hearts of the two of them, they care about each other. After everything, they decided to venture together into the forest they had talked about before. After a few months there, despite Pyoran's age of almost 90 years, he remained energetic and fished every day as his routine. Fushur, after spending a long time with Pyoran, now has more knowledge to keep himself pure and safe. He sets rules for himself. First, if the knockers are nearby, he must take Pyorin and escape. Second, he had to limit himself from transforming into a creature whose nature he didn't fully understand, because if he turned into something like a leech, he wouldn't be able to protect Pyorin. When the knockers attack, Fuchsia starts going to bed early and wakes up faster than Pyorin. He also began to take note of important things to remember and tasks to do. Pyorin once told Fuchsia about his desire to be young again, saying that he used to be very beautiful but has spent most of his life working. However, in the last years of her life, she felt really happy to be able to live freely and have grandchildren like Fuchsia. Hearing those things made Fuchsia appreciate Pyorin even more. However, heaven does not give everything to anyone. One day, Pyorin begins to feel unwell and becomes more irritable than before. His memory also slowly began to decline. Even so, Fuchsia ignored all of that and continued to take care of him until the end. Until one day, Pyorin suddenly looked normal. When it started to rain, he asked Fuchsia to go get some dried fish, while he lay down to face his last moment. He summons the Creator and asks him to take him away before Fuchsia returns. If possible, he also hopes that his old body can become something more useful to Fuchsia in the next life. The Creator appears at that last moment and agrees to Pyorin's request. In the other world, Pyorin saw a younger self, and as he said, she was indeed very beautiful. The Creator retains his best qualities in a sphere, like Fuchsia's original form, before Pyorin disappears. Fuchsia once again witnessed the passing of his loved ones. The sky darkened, and the rain fell like his mournful tears. After cremating Pyorin, who is not only his grandmother but also his close friend, Fuchsia finds his last message left on paper. Pyorin hopes that Fuchsia lives to pursue his dreams, just like he has lived a life without regrets. Time passed, and the Creator had nothing new to say. Fuchsia has now reached middle age, laughing madly after dittying one knocker.